fast, where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to row-wide facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome back to the Bullvine Podcast, where we cut through dairy industry noise to get you the insights that actually matter for your operation.
And today we are diving deep into a feature piece about a topic with a pretty wild headline. It's an article covering what they call the 1,113 kilogram question.
Yeah, it's quite the hook. When I first saw that number, I thought it was a typo.
Right. It sounds like total clickbait, frankly. I mean, 1,113 kilograms. That is roughly, 2,450 pounds of milk?
Almost exactly, yeah.
And the claim in this deep dive is that this massive amount of milk in the first lactation hinges on, wait for it, calf starter.
Calf starter.
Which is just, come on, 2,500 pounds of milk from just feeding a different calf starter. I read that and immediately put my skeptic hat on.
You should. We both should. That's what we do here.
Okay.
But here's the thing. The number is actually real.
It's not marketing fluff.
It is not marketing fluff. It comes directly from Cornell University research. But the real story here, and what we're going to unpack today, isn't just about dumping more grain in a bucket.
Right, because it's never that simple.
Exactly. It is a much more nuanced conversation about consistency, about biology, and what we're actually feeding those rumen bugs in the very first 60 days of life.
So we are essentially talking about whether the good enough approach is actually costing us thousands of pounds of milk down the road?
Precisely. And for decades, I feel like the industry view on calf starter has been pretty utilitarian.
Oh, 100%. It's viewed as a bridge. It's just necessary but unremarkable. You call the mill, you ask for the 18 or 20% starter, you ask what the price is, and if it meets the tag minimums, you just buy it.
You don't really think about it as a strategic lever.
No, you really don't. You're just trying to get them off milk replacer without them going backward. You're looking at the input cost for that specific month.
But that mindset is shifting. Producers are realizing that early nutrition isn't just about keeping the calf alive or hitting a weaning weight. It's about, and I love this analogies from the piece, it's about laying concrete for the cow's future structure.
Laying concrete. I like that visual, because if you pour a bad foundation, it honestly doesn't matter how nice the framing is later on. The house is going to crack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the stakes are massive here. Let's go back to that big number, because we need to set the table for why you should even care about this.
Let's do it.
The core statistic from the research out of Cornell found that 1 single kilogram of pre-weaning average daily gain, just 1 extra kilo of ADG, correlates to 1,113 kilograms of additional milk in the very first lactation.
Okay, let me play the practical farmer for a second, because I'm looking at my feed bill. You are telling me that if I get my calves to grow just a little bit faster right now, I get 2,500 pounds of free milk 2 years from now.
Well, it's not free.
Right.
And it's definitely not magic. It is straight biology. And it is not just one study anymore. The piece highlights a 2025 meta-analysis. They looked at 18 different studies and confirmed this relationship completely holds up.
18 studies. So this is a highly repeatable result.
Highly repeatable. And the Cornell data tracks this even further, showing that the benefits persist into the second and third lactations.
Wait, it carries over that far?
Yes. We are talking about nearly 1,300 kilograms of extra milk across 3 lactations for every single kilo of pre-weaning gain.
So the stakes are essentially lifetime production versus saving a few bucks on a bag of feed today.
That is the exact trade-off. But this is where the friction comes in, because there is a massive battle of philosophies happening at the feed mill.
The least cost formulation versus the fixed formulation.
Yes, the least cost trap.
Yeah.
Let's dig into our first segment here and really identify the problem.
I think this is where we need to unpack the controversy, because most farmers, myself included, we are trained to look at the feed tag. If the tag says 20% protein and 4% fat and the price works for my budget, I assume the product is consistent. I assume bag A is exactly the same as bag B.
And that right there is the dangerous assumption.
How so?
Because while the nutrient profile on the tag might look exactly the same from month to month, the actual ingredients used to hit those numbers might be changing every single time the commodity markets shift.
Okay. So 1 week, the mill is using soybean meal to hit that 20%.
Yep.
And then the next week, soy gets expensive, so they swap in canola meal.
Exactly.
Maybe they throw in some distiller's grains if the price drops on a local rail car.
Spot on. And that is where the 1,113 kilogram question really lives. It's not just about the protein level. It's about the consistency of the ingredients themselves.
Because the industry standard of chasing the cheapest commodity to meet a protein target might actually be secretly sabotaging the rumen development.
It is. But we have to be fair here. The research on feed consistency specifically is framed as subjective in the source material, right?
Right. It's not definitive proof. It's not a 10,000 cow randomized trial.
No, it's not. But we have incredible biological data on how the rumen works, and we have producer case studies that are just really hard to ignore.
Okay, so walk me through the biology then. Why do my cows care if the protein comes from soy or canola as long as they get the protein?
It all comes down to the microbiome. We talk all the time about feeding the calf, but we are really feeding the bugs in the rumen.
The rumen bugs.
The bugs. The rumen microbiome is establishing itself during those first critical weeks. It's an entire colonization process.
Right.
And there's this fascinating research by Sharon and colleagues published in Frontiers in Microbiology. It shows that rumen bugs are incredibly sensitive to change.
How sensitive?
They take anywhere from a few days to get this 3 full weeks to adapt to a new diet.
3 weeks.
3+ weeks.
So if I am buying a least cost formulated starter and the local mill changes the formula every time they get a new delivery of cheaper ingredients.
And your calves' rumens are in a constant state of adaptation stress.
Wow.
Just as the bugs finally figure out how to digest the current mix, the mix changes again.
It's like, okay, imagine switching a construction crew's lunch menu every single day.
Okay.
One day you feed them heavy burgers. The next day it's strictly vegan salad. The next day it's raw fish.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Right. And then you expect them to go back out on the site and lay bricks at peak efficiency immediately.
You would have a lot of upset stomachs and a whole lot less bricklaying. That is a perfect analogy.
They'd be spending all their time just trying to process the fuel instead of doing the work.
Exactly. And the consequence on the farm is very real. Feed efficiency drops because the bugs just aren't optimized for the substrate they're trying to break down.
So the risk of digestive upset rises.
Substantially. The rumen never actually stabilizes.
And we see this in the hutches, don't we? We see the scours, we see those stallouts where a calf just stops growing for a week and looks a little rough.
Yes, and what do we usually blame it on?
Oh, we blame the weather. We blame a draft in the barn, or we think some random virus just blew through the operation.
But the data suggests it could literally just be that the feed changed.
That is a major variable that we almost completely ignore.
We assume the feed is a constant because the physical bag looks the exact same. But biologically, it might be presenting a completely different challenge for that calf to break down.
Okay, so biologically speaking, consistency makes a ton of sense. Rumen stability is good. But let's look at the industry reality check here in segment 2.
Let's do it.
Are we actually doing a bad job right now? Because I feel like, generally speaking, calf health has gotten a lot better over the last 20 years.
It has. We absolutely have to give credit where it is due. The deep dive highlights data from the USDA's National Animal Health Monitoring System, the NAHMS data.
Right.
Back in 1992, calf mortality was sitting at 8.4%.
Which is rough.
Very rough. But by the 2014 study, it was down to 5.0%.
So it almost cut in half. That is significant progress across the industry.
It is great progress. Better housing, better colostrum management, better vaccination protocols. But
There is always a but.
there is always a but. The 2014 NAHMS study also showed that 33.8% of preweaned heifers experienced at least one bout of illness.
Wait, almost 34%.
Yes, morbidity is nearly 34%.
So a third of the replacement herd is getting sick?
A third. And digestive problems specifically account for half of that number. That's, wow, when you actually say it out loud like that. 33.8%, it's sobering.
If you have 100 calves, 34 of them require treatment. That is a massive amount of labor tying up your crew.
Massive.
That is a massive amount of drug cost and a massive amount of lost structural growth.
Now compare that reality to the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association Gold Standards. The DCHA targets.
What are their targets?
Their target for scours is less than 10%,
Okay.
and their target for survival is greater than 97%.
So we are sitting at an industry average of 33% morbidity, and the gold standard is under 10% for scours.
Exactly. There is a massive gap there.
A huge gap. And that gap represents pure money left on the table.
Which brings us perfectly to segment 3, following the money.
Because we can sit here and talk about microbiome biology and DCHA standards all day, but if the bank account doesn't balance at the end of the month, none of this matters.
Right. So let's talk about the cost of consistency. If you go to your feed rep tomorrow and say, I want a fixed formulation.
I want the exact same ingredients, the same ratios, every single load, no matter what the commodity market does.
They're going to charge you for taking on that risk.
Oh, absolutely. They have to hedge that.
The source material estimates the premium for fixed formulation starters is typically around $20 to $40 per ton.
Okay, $40 a ton. That sounds pretty steep when you're staring at the monthly invoice.
It does. But let's break down the farmer math here. Let's take a standard scenario of a 400 calf operation.
Okay, 400 calves.
They use roughly 60 tons of starter annually.
60 tons. So at a $40 premium, that is an extra $2,400 a year.
Exactly. $1,200 to $2,400 per year, depending on the premium spread in your area.
All right, $2,400, that is not nothing. But in the grand scheme of a 400 cow dairy plaque, that's the cost of what? A couple of dead calves.
Less than that if you factor in the genetic potential you're losing. And this is where the return on investment potential gets really interesting.
Walk me through the ROI.
If you gain just 5 extra kilograms in weaning weight, because your calves aren't stalling out every time the diet changes.
And we apply that Cornell multiplier.
The 1,113 kilogram rule. Yes. The extra milk on your check in 2 years covers that $2,400 feed premium very, very quickly.
And that's not even counting the immediate savings in the calf barn.
Right.
Because treating a sick calf isn't cheap. You have the antibiotics, you have the electrolytes, the oral rehydration therapies, and the sheer time it takes your calf manager to tend to them.
It adds up fast.
If I can cut my scours rate from 30% down to 10% just by stabilizing the feed, that is real cash in my pocket today, not just milk money in 2 years.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The hidden savings in reduced treatment costs alone often justify the premium. But I know you have a strong counterpoint here based on farm realities.
I do. Because I really do not want listeners to think this is some sort of magic powder you can just buy your way into.
It never is.
If your housing is essentially a swamp, if your ventilation is terrible and the air is heavy with ammonia, if your colostrum harvesting and delivery program is weak,
then spending $40 extra a ton on fancy consistent feed is useless.
You are just lighting money on fire at that point. If the calf is breathing bad air and swimming in mud, the consistency of the starch source in their grain is the least of their problem.
100%. You simply cannot feed your way out of bad management.
Right.
But the consensus from the experts is clear. The math heavily favors the premium feed if you have those management basics covered.
If you are already running a tight ship, this is the very next lever you need to pull.
So let's look at an operation that actually pulled that lever. Moving into segment 4, we have a fantastic case study from California.
I love real-world examples. What did they do?
It's a large operation, and the calf manager decided she was done chasing the cheapest feed option every month.
She locked in a fixed formulation?
She locked it in, same ingredients, same ratios.
And what were the actual results?
Her scours rate dropped to 6%.
6%. So she actually beat the DCHA Gold Standard of 10%.
She crushed it. Yeah. But here's the metric that I found most fascinating from her data. She tracked something called the coefficient of variation, the CV.
Okay, break that down for us. What is the CV in this context?
It is a statistical measure of consistency. It's the standard deviation divided by the mean.
In plain English.
In plain English, it tells you how wide the spread of your weaning weights is across a group of calves.
Okay, so are they all weaning at a similar weight, or are they all over the board?
Exactly. Before the switch to fixed feed, her CV was 14%, which is pretty widespread.
Mm-hmm.
Within 4 months of implementing the consistent feed program, that CV dropped to under 9%.
That is a massive tightening of the group. Why does that matter so much to the bottom line?
Because uniform calves are vastly easier to manage.
Oh, of course.
If you have a pen where some heifers are weaning at 150 pounds and others are pushing 200 pounds, breeding them on a schedule becomes a nightmare.
Grouping them is a nightmare. Transitioning them is a headache.
Uniformity equals efficiency.
And there is another point in this case study that I really gravitate toward. The noise factor.
Yes, the diagnostic noise.
Manager mentioned that when the feed was finally consistent, she could actually see the other problems on the dairy.
Because the variable feed was masking everything else.
Right. Once the feed was a constant known entity, she realized, oh, we actually have a ventilation dead spot in this specific row of hutches.
Or we have a weekend shift that isn't mixing the colostrum correctly.
It removes the confounding variable completely.
It does. If the feed changes every 2 weeks and a calf gets sick, you have no idea what caused it.
Right.
Was it the new soy batch? Was it the weather swing? Was it bad bedding?
But if the feed is rock solid and never changes and a calf gets sick, for a fact you have a management or environmental issue to hunt down.
That diagnostic clarity alone is worth the extra money. It stops you from chasing ghosts.
Okay, so let's put ourselves in the listener's shoes. They are driving the feed truck right now, nodding along, thinking, okay, I want this consistent feed.
They're sold on the concept.
But how do they actually know if they're getting it? Because let's be honest, every single feed salesman is going to stand in your driveway and say their product is high quality and consistent.
Which brings us to segment 5, future implications and supplier relations. You absolutely have to audit your supplier. You cannot just take the rep's word for it.
So what are the questions I need to ask? Because just looking at them and saying, are you lying to me, probably isn't going to get a straight answer.
No, probably not. You need to ask these 3 specific questions. Number 1, ask them, can you show me the batch records for the last 12 months?
Batch records.
Yes. If they are actually running a consistent fixed formulation, they will have detailed batch records showing that the ingredient inclusion rates stayed exactly the same.
And if they hem and haw about it.
If they can't show you, or they make excuses about proprietary formulas, they are not tracking consistency, period.
That's a great litmus test. Show me the receipts.
Question number 2 to ask your rep. What percentage of your ingredients are from fixed suppliers versus the spot market?
Meaning, do you buy your protein from the same reliable processor every single time, or are you just buying whatever is cheapest on the commodity rail car that week?
Exactly. The source of the ingredient matters just as much as the ingredient itself. And question number 3, do you test your incoming ingredients with NIR spectroscopy?
Near-infrared spectroscopy.
Yes. It is a scanning technology used to verify the actual nutrient profile of the raw ingredients before they ever get dumped into the mixer.
So it proves they are actively testing the inputs, not just slapping a label on the final output.
Right. It shows a commitment to actual quality control at the mill level.
Okay, those are 3 highly actionable questions. Now let's manage some expectations here.
We need to.
Because biology takes time, as we established. If I go out and switch my herd to a fixed formula tomorrow, are my calves going to look absolutely perfect by this Friday?
Definitely not. And in fact, they might actually look a little bit worse for a few days.
This is what you call the wobble, right?
A wobble, yes. The source material warns farmers not to panic during the initial switch. Weeks 1 through 3 are the wobble period.
What happens during the wobble?
The rumen bugs are adapting to the new feed. Even though it's a better consistent feed, it is still new to them.
So you might see fecal consistency change, the manure might get a little loose.
And that right there is the exact moment the farmer usually panics.
Oh yeah. They get on the phone call, the nutritionist, and start screaming that this expensive premium feed is giving all their calves scours.
And that is the absolute worst thing you can do. You have to ride out the adaptation phase.
Do not fire the nutritionist on day 3.
Do not fire them. Hold the line. Because in weeks 3 through 6, that is when intake smooths out and you see treatments start to aggressively decline.
And then by week 6 through 8.
By week 6 through 8, you start seeing that weaning weight distribution tighten up. That coefficient of variation drops.
So you really have to commit to at least a solid 2-month trial to even begin to see the true biological results.
At least 2 months. You cannot rush the microbiome.
Okay, we are getting towards the final stretch here, and we need to do our signature segment, segment 6, the contrarian takes.
The bovine perspective.
Right, because we have painted a pretty rosy picture so far. Pay more money, get more milk. But we have to be honest about the limitations of the data we're looking at.
We do. There is currently limited controlled research specifically comparing variable versus fixed feed formulas directly against each other in massive trials.
Right. We have the Cornell data showing the link between early growth and first lactation milk.
Yes.
And we have the microbiology data showing how long the rumen takes to adapt to diet changes.
Correct.
But the direct hard link saying fixed feed equals more milk is still largely based on combining those biological principles with producer experience.
It is suggestive evidence. It is very strong logical evidence, but it is not absolute irrefutable proof from a 10,000 cow randomized control trial.
And here's my no-nonsense view on this whole thing. This strategy isn't for everyone.
Explain what you mean by that.
It comes back to prioritization. If you are a dairy and you have dirty water buckets, inconsistent feeding times, and poor ventilation, fixing those management failures costs you $0 in feed premiums.
You have to fix the free stuff first.
Exactly. Nutritionists will be the first to admit this. What works as a marginal gain for one high-performing farm might be a complete waste of money for a farm that is struggling with the basics.
If you are losing 10% of your calves to pneumonia because your barn is closed up too tight in the winter, do not worry about the amino acid profile of your starter grain.
Go open the curtains.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I will add this layer of nuance from the research. Operations that have high genomic selection for feed efficiency seem to see the absolute biggest bang for their buck with fixed feeds.
Well, that makes total sense.
If you are spending big money buying high-merit genetics or aggressively breeding for high feed efficiency, those calves are basically finely tuned Ferraris.
And if you put low-octane, dirty variable fuel into a Ferrari, it is going to sputter.
It will underperform. High-merit calves biologically respond better to optimize stable nutrition.
So if you are investing heavily on the genetic side of the ledger, you almost have to invest in the nutrition side to actually unlock it.
Otherwise, you are just wasting that genetic premium entirely.
All right, let's bring this all home for the listener. A farmer just finished milking. They are driving the skid steer pushing up feed right now.
Yeah.
What are the 3 concrete things they need to take away and do?
Okay, here are your actionable insights. Let's break it down by timeline. Number 1 is your immediate action for this week.
What are we doing this week?
Benchmark your baseline. Pull your weaning weight data for the last 3 calf cohorts. Do the math and calculate your coefficient of variation.
The standard deviation divided by the mean.
Yes. If your CV is over 10%, or if your herd morbidity is anywhere near that NAHMS average of 33%, you have a clear problem. You have to know your starting point before you change anything.
All right, what is number 2? The medium-term strategy for the next 3 to 6 months.
The supplier audit. Sit down with your feed rep and ask the hard questions. Fixed versus least cost. Show me the batch records. Are you using NIR?
And look closely at the price difference. Take that $20 to $40 a ton and run the actual math for your specific herd size.
And if the math looks viable, consider running a pilot program. Put 1 cohort of calves on the fixed feed while maintaining your old program for the others. Track the difference in treatments and growth.
Let the calves tell you if it works. And number 3, the long-term positioning for the next 1 to 2 years.
Structure for lifetime yield. You have to mentally view calf raising as a long-term investment, not a short-term cost center.
Aim for those DCHA Gold Standards. 97% survival and less than 10% scours.
And most importantly, monitor the first lactation milk yields of those pilot calves that were on the consistent feed. Validate that Cornell 1,113 kilogram statistic on your own farm using your own parlor data.
That is the ultimate test. Do not just trust the university study, trust your own bulk tank.
Exactly. What if we completely stopped viewing calf starter as just a feed and started viewing it as a genetic expression tool?
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. It really changes the way you look at a simple bag of grain. It's not just about the price printed on the tag. It is fundamentally about what the bugs in the rumen are doing with that feed.
And realizing that a lack of consistency might be the hidden variable that is holding back your entire herd's potential.
Absolutely. So, to everyone listening, do your own math. Generic ROI claims are trash. Use your own numbers. This has been another Bullvine podcast from the Bullvine Podcast. For more straight-talking industry analysis, head over to www.thebullvine.com.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are out with new episodes every day, and upcoming topics will be diving into robotic rotary efficiency. Thanks for listening.